Welcome to Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. On this podcast, we journey through the devastating experience of the death of a child. Grief is seldom discussed openly in our culture, and the death of a child makes people feel even more uncomfortable. We approach the topic openly and honestly, speaking to people who have lost loved ones and experts who help care for them. Whether you are a parent experiencing loss or someone who wants to support another going through this tragedy, this podcast strives to offer hope and help.
Thank you so much for agreeing to come on the podcast today. Both of you. I have two guests today. I have Janie and Andrea, and they have a unique story because Janie lost her son, who was Andrea's husband. And then their son, so Janie's grandson and Andrea's son, died as well. So we are really kind of here to talk about two amazing souls and different relationships, relationships of mothers, two mothers, a wife, and a grandmother. So we're going to kind of explore a little bit new areas today. And I just am very excited to have both of you here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marcy, for having us here and to share our story with everyone.
Yeah. We like talking about the boys all the time. We like talking about.
I know.
Some people think it's taboo. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to ask us about it, and I like talking about Nico and Julian, and I bring it up, and it might make them uncomfortable, but I still bring them up,
No, and I think it's good that we do, because I think that it helps to make people realize that it isn't taboo and that it doesn't make us more sad. That's, I think, the big thing is I always feel like, well, I don't want to talk about Andy because I don't want to make you sad. Like, I am sad. And having you remember Andy, even for a moment, for a little thing, actually puts that sadness down a little bit.
Yeah,
it makes me a little happy. Now, it may bring tears, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you made me sad. You actually made me feel a little bit better. So,
yeah, I might start crying, but when I'm talking about him, but it's good, it's just because I'm crying because of a memory of, I like when someone comes up to me with a story about Nico, because he was a jokester for sure. He was always playing pranks and being funny. And I like when somebody tells me, he did this once and he did that. And that's Nico, that's how he was, so I like it.
Mm-hmm. And if you all are watching this on either the YouTube channel or on Instagram or some other way, you may see that on Janie's computer screen, when her name lights up, it doesn't light up as her name. It lights up as Nicholas. And I just want you to kind of tell the audience why that is, Janie.
Yeah, I was explaining to Marcy before you got on that he took the opportunity when he was on furlough for his job. And Andrea told him, go ahead and go see your mom. It's fine with me. She has a 12-year-old and she was pregnant, and she has Julian. He was 4. And he came, and I told Marcy he took the time to lose weight and get in shape. Remember, he was not that he was fat, but he did need to lose a couple of pounds. And he took over my computer, and he was doing he was on Zoom classes, and he put it there, Nicholas. And he also is on a Gmail that now I can't get on Gmail. And I was telling her, now I'm on my AOL here because I don't want to change Nico's Gmail on my account. I don't want to change anything he did. He even has his picture up, like his profile picture on the Gmail. I can't change it. I can't change it, and I can't. So anytime I'm on job, because I'm a stenographer and we're doing Zoom depots, they'll say, who's Nicholas? And I go, I don't go on with the story because I don't want to bring up any sad stories.
I'm Nicholas. Yes.
Yeah, it's me. It's my son used my computer, but that's all I'll leave it at. But that's why it says Nicholas, because I left it there.
So anyway, I just thought that was a really sweet story and a good way to start. So do you want to start out by just talking about Nicholas? And you can start, Janie, by talking about even who he was as a kid. And then we'll move on to Nico and Nicholas, the husband.
Yeah. Nicholas was always, he was a mama's boy to the end. Everybody teased him and he didn't care. He didn't care if he was a mama's boy, and he would say it. But since he was a baby, his father died when he was really young, like 6 years old. So it was just me, him, and his sister always. And he was a tattletailer just on his sister. He tattletaled on her, and we were just really always close. He was never going to leave his mother. And I said, but what about when you get married? And he goes, and your wife doesn't like me. She's out. He'd say all these cute things. And she's out and she doesn't like you. You come first. He'd say it. And then when he got to his teen years, we were living, I think I mentioned that we were living in Florida for his junior high school and high school years, but we were always going back to Texas. And, he started liking girls, and giving me trouble with the girls. And then we go to Texas and here comes Andrea. They were 14. She was 13. He was 14. Yes.
Really?
Yes. And there was a back and forth, we lived in Florida, and it wasn't until he graduated high school that it was really, really hard for me to let go of him. But he went over there with his sister, and I came over here with my husband in DC. But we've always been really close since he was little. And to the end, we talked at least twice a day. We talked, and sometimes we argued. There wasn't arguments here and there, but we always were very, very close. And
that's funny. My Andy was like that too. In fact, when he talked about when he grew up, he was going to move next door into the Campbell's house. And then because he really did want to get married and have kids and stuff, but he didn't want to ever be far from his mama. So he was never going to move farther than right next door.
No. And Julian was like that with Andrea too. I mean, if you see pictures of them, but Nicholas was the same way, always kissing on me, always, but just a mama's boy to the end, and everybody, like I said, would tease him. And even they got married. They got married at court, but then we went on a cruise, and they did the ceremony there. But even for their wedding, it had to be on my birthday, which was just the 18th of July. So it had to be on my birthday because he wanted to celebrate it the same day as my birthday. We just were always close, So then when he eventually, even though they were together at first, they didn't get married till a little bit later, till after Julian was born. But they've been together since, like I said, since they were teenagers. And they came, and I remember when she was going to have, Maddox. He's 12 years old right now. And I thought, oh, maybe Nicholas isn't ready because he was still, boys are as it is, they mature, slower than girls do, I think, at least some boys. And I didn't want him, but he turned out to be an amazing father, an amazing dad that I'm super proud of. I am proud of him, how he was a dad. And then with Julian, the same way, them with their, they're into sports. If you ask Maddox anything about a sport, tennis, volleyball, basketball, golf, anything, he can answer this. I guarantee you, Maddox will answer that question. And that's exactly how Nick was. And I don't understand where Nico got it because he didn't have his dad growing up. So he's really into sports, and that's the way. And I think Julian was going that direction too, wasn't he, Andrea? Yes. Throwing the football around. He was almost 5. Actually, his birthday is the 22nd of this month. And he was the same way. And him and his boys were, and then they were having another boy. So, and he would have had the 3 boys in the sports, driving Andrea crazy. She let them throw balls in the house, and she let them do it. She let them play football in the house.
Oh, so Andrea, I was going to have her just talk about Nico as a kid, but I think you can obviously talk about him as a kid too, because yeah.
I know. Now that I look back and I'm like, where were my parents?
I asked her that the other day. I asked her not long ago, like, when I would see you at the house, how did you get there? Because she wasn't driving. She was 13, and she just said, because her dad was right there. She goes, I had my ways. So I didn't ask anybody. I don't know how she got to my house, but they looked like kids. She posted some pictures on their anniversary, and they literally looked like 2 little kids in junior high, and that's what they were. Yeah, so she's been with him all that time. Mm-hmm.
So you talk about that. You talk about your relationship a little bit with him and meeting him and everything.
Yeah, well, Nicholas was a jokester. He was very affectionate, and he was a mama's boy, definitely. And I would take that to advantage sometimes. I'll be like, I'm going to go tell your mom.
She would.
But,
she never called me, only once in a while, but she'd hold him to that. I'm going to call your mom.
But yeah, I mean, when we first met, we were babies, 14, 13, and I found out he lived in Florida. And I said, no way, I'm not going to talk to you. But he kept on writing to me, and he would come every 6 months, and we just met up. He just wouldn't leave. So eventually we just stuck, and he would always want to get married when we got older. But, you know, right now I was like, I need get my school, my education, my career, and then we can, you know, get married, make it official. But we took different turns, but we got it done. You know, first came babies, and then career, and then marriage. But yes, he was, Nicholas was, like, again, a very affectionate. And that's one thing that I definitely miss about him, is that all those years, he would still say how beautiful I was, you know, and he would just always, I would be cooking and he would come behind, and just, I miss all of that. So definitely very.
How long were you together?
18, 17 years.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Yeah, but beautiful years with him.
Yeah. Now, why don't you talk about Julian a little bit?
Oh, well, my Julian, he was so precious. So Julian, he would go by Juju. I did not agree with Juju at first. But Nicholas said, I'm going to call him Juju. I said, well, I'm going to call him Julian. Well, everyone in the family called him Juju. So it just stuck. But
so did you call him Juju eventually?
Yes.
Yeah.
But Julian and Nicholas were two peas in a pod. Julian was loud. He was very social. He affectionate, independent. He could do it. Total opposite from my firstborn. And just a joy. He was, in my words, perfect. You know,
and a jokester too. He was a jokester too.
Yes. And he was very, I would say, very animated with his face when he, you know, every time you see him in pictures, he's like pointing at you, peace sign, and just very
Spider-Man too. So
Spider-Man,
spider web, you know, and
so very animated. He was your typical 4-year-old kid. He loved Spider-Man. He loved Mickey Mouse. He was just like his dad, who loved movies. You know, you would walk into our house and a Disney movie would be on. And then music was a big thing. Well, still is. But music, I don't like cooking. It's a chore. So I put the music on, and I would be cooking, and Julian would dance with me, you know. And so that's one thing, that Julian loved music. He loved to dance. And but he was a beautiful boy, beautiful, beautiful boy.
And it sounded like he loved to make his mama smile if he would dance with her in the kitchen.
Oh, yes. We have videos of us dancing, and those videos I'll always cherish.
So I think Grandma's right that he was a bit of a mama's boy too, huh?
Yeah, he was definitely. And he was just developing his character too, you know, like my has 2 daughters, and one of them is a couple of years older. So they bickered back and forth, and he loved to say, Katie, her name was Katie. Katie did it. It was Katie. You know, everything was Katie's fault, you know, whatever he did. But he was very, very much a jokester, and just really kept getting a good character right, at the last year of his life, he was getting on the phone with me since I could only FaceTime with them or when I was there, and he'd be telling me a story that happened or wanting me to buy him something. He knew he could get me to buy him something. He showed me a game he wanted or something, but he was a character. But he definitely was in love with his mother. Definitely, they were very, very close. More so than you and Maddox. You're close with Maddox, but I think Julian, I don't know. Yeah, he was always right there with you.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. I've got 3 kids too. And Andy was the one that was the mama's boy. I mean, the other ones, it always was a big joke in our family that my daughter was the daddy's girl. Andy was a mama's boy. And then my son, Peter, didn't need anybody. He was just fine.
Yeah.
Actually, although in hindsight, we feel like really what he needed was his brother. He really, you know what I mean? He just loved his brother. So
how old was Peter when the accident happened?
Yeah. So Peter was 12 when Andy died. He was 14.
So same as my firstborn.
Yeah. Maddox was 12.
Maddox was 12. Yes.
Almost 12. He was 11.
Almost. Yeah.
Yeah. So why don't you go ahead and talk about what happened then? I don't know who wants to start that.
You want to go ahead?
Oh, yes. So, I would say their anniversary just came up this past June. Mm-hmm. They were going to go off to go get ice cream.
Uh-huh.
And the next thing we know is that my husband crashed into a guardrail on the freeway. Unfortunately, my husband crossed over with Julian and they were struck, and they departed suddenly, instantly.
Yeah.
So reliving that night is it's so hard for us. So going into each detail is so hard, but yeah, it was very sudden.
Yeah. Just like with us, ours was very sudden, car accident, just the same. So you were just at home then?
Yes, I was at home. But I just got a mother instinct because this ice cream trip turned a little bit longer than usual. So
right.
The next thing you know, I just get, I get the news.
Yeah.
So it's I would say it's just like if you got shot, how people describe how you've been shot, but you don't know, you don't
an out of body experience.
Out of body, and it's sort of denial too. Marcy, I don't know how you felt when you got the news about Andy.
Yeah.
I know you were in a vehicle, right?
Yeah, I was there.
Kind of like, no, I felt like, no, that's not right.
I know. Yep. I totally hear you. You're like, that just can't be. That just can't be. It's just, you just can't wrap your head around it. I just don't think you can. It's like your mind doesn't want to believe it.
Exactly. And I would say the first hour, I knew they were gone, but I didn't even know the details,
Right.
I just knew there was a car accident. I didn't know the extent of it. So that's how in shock I felt like I was, that I didn't even ask. I just said, they're not here. No, they're not here.
Right.
So it's what the body does. It's I guess it's the adrenaline rush that kicks in, so, but it was very, very sudden, and I was 7 months pregnant.
That's what we were all worried about. She was 7 months pregnant. My daughter kind of knew first, and then she didn't know how to tell. But this one, Andrea, knew something was not right. And I happened to be on an out of town girls trip with my friend, and my daughter called me because everybody knows I talked to him, and I said, I haven't heard from him since 3 o'clock. Oh, he went to ice cream and Andrea's looking for him. Okay, I didn't think anything.
Yeah.
And
so you went looking for him, Andrea, when he didn't come back?
I did. I just said maybe he's probably,
Yeah, ran out of gas or car broke down, something, right?
Yeah, maybe I'll find him. They just told me I knew where they were going to go get ice cream, and he just told me. So, but no, I didn't find them. And then when I came back home, my sister-in-law was there. And at that time, I don't know specific timing because it was all a blur.
Yeah.
But something told me to go on the internet, and not the best way to find out.
No. Not at all. So that's how you really found out, is through the internet?
Well, she knew something was wrong, but you didn't know what was wrong.
Exactly. And then it's just, I guess, that mother instinct just put 2 and 2 together.
Yeah.
And yes, it was, I would just say I for sure fell to the ground.
Yeah.
And my dad was there too. And I would say it's this yell that I've never had I never knew I had.
Yeah.
And I had someone describe it like a mother's howl, I guess how wolves howl.
Yeah.
And that's how I described it. And I mean, and then after that, I just kept on thinking about my baby that I was carrying. And I work at a hospital, so I knew what it was to go into preterm labor and to have a newborn, a preemie. And I was like, this baby cannot come early. So, I was very thankful that I was able to carry to term, and I was able to give birth to baby Archie, and he was a healthy 8-pound baby, and he's now 10 months. And
wow.
He is a joy. Yes.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure he is. Sure he is.
I would say he's my little saving grace. He is the light in this nightmare, that we're all living in.
Yeah.
So, but yes, he's definitely a big, big help.
Mm-hmm. So how did you find out about the accident then, Janie?
Well, like I said, I was with my friend. I was in Tennessee, actually, with my friend. It was her 50th birthday, and my niece. And like I said, my daughter had called, and she said, have you talked to Nick? She goes, Andrea's looking for him because he went for ice cream, and it's going straight to voicemail, his phone now. So she said she was driving up and down their major street. And I said, no. And I didn't, that was about 7 or 8 p.m. And I said, no. But I didn't feel right, and I wanted to go back to my room with my friend. Not my niece was carrying on with some other friends, and I said I want to go back to the room. And my friend said, oh, "Don't worry about, he's probably fine, I'm sure." And then it was weird. I called up his aunt that he would go visit sometime, and I said, "Hey, have you talked to Nicholas?" And she goes, "No, I'm out of town actually." And we were just talking, and my friend was on the other phone, her phone, and she was talking to, I didn't know, my daughter, or I don't even know who she was talking to. And she came and she put her hand on my wrist, and she says, "Get off the phone." And that was it. I threw myself to the ground, and I always had, it's something stupid, I know, but since his father died, and I always thought I have some extra point. I got some extra guidance up there, his father's always. So even though I always worried about both my kids, I always had that in the back of my mind. Oh, God wouldn't do that.
Wouldn't do that to you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I know.
So I thought that, but when that happened, I don't even remember. I know I fell to the ground and I was screaming, and she said she was going to have to take me to the I remember her saying something about the hospital. And then I finally stepped out of it, but I was more concerned about Andrea because she's 7 months pregnant. I was worried about Maddox because I'm very close to Maddox, the 12-year-old.
Mhm.
But I don't even know how I got through. We stayed up all night, and my friend came with me to Texas, and we took the early morning flight. And I still was thinking, well, maybe there was a mistake.
Yeah.
I'm thinking the whole time on the plane, I go, maybe there was a mistake. And because first, I don't know how I heard or something that it was a little boy that passed. And then I said, well, it can't be them, because where's Nicholas? And, it can't be them. They got the wrong kid, because the little Julian's with his dad. They had said a little boy got hurt. And so I don't know how I heard that. But then, so I was thinking on the plane, I didn't say anything to my friend, but I just said, maybe it's a mistake. And then by the time I got up, my husband met me there. My husband met me there, of course. And it was just, I've never heard, it was just, even my brother-in-law, my son-in-law, my daughter's husband, I mean, he was howling like I never heard him cry.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It's, I always just called it the bad cry. And then I've been working with Gwen, and I started going to Starlight, and they call it the lament. And that is a better term, but that is truly what it is. It's just, when you lament, it's just guttural and emotional, and every bit of you just lay out and in mourning. And I think it's needed sometimes. And
oh yeah.
I mean, I would do that,
Oh, I still do that. I'll get in the car and do that often. I'll get in the car and just scream their name, so it makes me feel better. I don't do it in front of people because they'll probably think I'm nuts, but it makes me feel better when I call their name, like, where are you? I want to, everybody that knows me knows I'm always in a hurry, even when I don't have to be in a hurry. I'm just like, so I never see these signs that, that my daughter sees the sign, Andrea gets signs, but I think it's because I'm not taking the time to look and taking the time to, I know that there are signs around there, that they are around. I feel him, but I want to see signs too,
Yeah. We get kind of, I get kind of jealous sometimes when I feel like I want a little bit, right?
Do you get any signs, Mercy?
Sometimes I guess there have been some things. One thing that happened, it was very kind of crazy. It was even just on the day of Andy's funeral. So they loved playing with, my boys love playing in the backyard. And they had this Diego ball, from Dora the Explorer, Diego. So they had this Diego ball that they got when they were little toddlers. And so then when they got older, they could kick that thing really high, right? And they would just abuse this Diego ball, and it would never get destroyed. And one day, probably 3 years before Andy died, it got stuck up high in a tree, and it never, ever came down. And, we're in Michigan. We get bad snowstorms. We get weather coming through. That ball never came down until the day of Andy's funeral.
Wow.
And the day of Andy's funeral it was a little bit overcast. We had a few raindrops now and then, but it was not stormy. It was not windy, but that ball just came down and landed in the middle of the yard, the Diego ball. And that was like, okay, Andy, you know what I mean?
No
like,
coincidence.
No coincidence that it would be stuck in a tree for 3 years through weather and then just come down at that moment. So what have you had happen, Andrea?
Well, I have multiple. One of them is, I would say that it was before the accident. I felt like the signs were already coming. I was showing Julian how to pray, his prayers.
Yeah.
Just the basic prayers, and one night, I would say probably 2 weeks before the accident, he was in my bed, and he looked at me and he goes, "Mom," and I go, "Yes," and he pointed to my dresser, which was so messy, and I had a picture of Jesus Christ on there. And he goes, Mom, Jesus? And I go, yeah. I go, he's looking at you. He goes, oh, okay. And now that I look back to it, I'm just like, was God already preparing my son to meet him?
Yeah.
Out of all that junk that was on my dresser, like, how did Julian just point that out? I just found that so odd. And I just felt like things were already getting ready at my house. And also I've had experiences with oops, sorry.
That's okay.
It's the work pager. But I've had experiences with dragonflies. I was working out with my cousin, and one dragonfly came in her garage, and I saw it, and I told her, I was like, hey, look, there goes a garage. And she goes, okay, well, they usually don't come in here. I was like, okay. And then like 10 minutes later comes 2 dragonflies. And then so we're working out. She's like, Andrea, those are your boys. And I was like, hey, boys. I was like, Mommy's working out. And then, so then I would say we finished our workout. So probably 15 minutes went by. We were sitting down, recovering. And there comes the dragonfly again. And this time it lands, like it's flying right here, this close. And I tell my cousin, I'm like,
so like right above your shoulder almost.
Yes. And I was like, do they bite? Or she's like, no, they don't bite. And she's in tears because she's like, that is not a coincidence. Those are your boys. So it was so funny because like that night before, I remember I prayed and I said, just give me a sign, a validation that they're in peace. I just want to know they're in peace. And I just felt like he answered me, and that's a validation. And then probably like 3 months after the accident too, my son calls me. He goes, Mom, there are 2 ducks in front of our house, and I'm scared to go to the bus. And I go, what? I go, FaceTime me. And there's no ponds around my house.
Yeah.
And
you're in Texas. There are not lots of ducks that are just hanging out.
Yeah. And then like my house is like in a little corner. So I snapped it. I took a picture of it because I was like, that is weird. I was like, well, Maddox, I was like, that's probably Dad and Juju telling you better hurry up and catch that bus. But
I need to look like at things like, my daughter said she found a white feather the other day, and she could hear my son saying, Jen, would you give this to Mom? She's not paying attention to this. Tell her this is the best. She said, because she's going 90 to nothing. But one thing I totally appreciate the month that I had with Nicholas here. He would never have been able to come here for a month, with his wife, but she was fine with him coming. And one time I saw the numbers 1111, and I'm sure you've heard before. So, they say an angel is thinking about you. And I told him, I said, oh, it's 1111. Probably my mom's thinking about me. And he goes, what does that mean? And I told him, and unbeknownst to me, he went home and told her. And so she was telling me this after they passed away. She said, Nicholas told me if I ever saw an 1111 together, that it's an angel thinking of me. And then I said, oh my gosh, I had just told him that story. So that month that he was here, we went on long walks. We did a lot of things that we never would have had a chance to do, because usually it's a visit and I'm over there for a few days, or he's here for a few days. And we don't have time for a lot, but we had a lot of, my husband too is crazy about my Nicholas. We're very close, and we never had that. And I'm just appreciative that I had that time with Nicholas here for a month. Even the dog, we have a golden doodle that would come and bark for Nicholas to open the door, and he'd say his name is Kobe, which my son and my grandson named him because of Kobe Bryant. And this is before Kobe passed away. So they named him after Kobe Bryant, but he'd say, what, Kobe? Kobe just wanted to come and sit with him, and he just sit with Nicholas. And even after Nicholas left, he would still do that, come and bark at the door, like, Nicholas, open the door, So I have those memories, and those things. Those are my last memories of Nicholas, of him. And he was only home 10 days when the accident happened.
That's what I was going to ask you. How long afterwards? So just 10 days later. Wow.
He left here June 10th, and he passed away on June 20th, the day before Father's Day. Yeah.
That was quite the gift that you had.
I do. And I do appreciate that. And I'm glad that I am, first you're mad at God. I'm mad at God, but I did get that, and a lot of people don't.
Because because how old was he?
32.
And he moved out of the house right after high school, right?
Oh, yeah.
So he hadn't spent a lot of time with you in the middle of
he's a big Redskin fan, and my husband is, so he'd come every year for a football game, and Maddox would come with him, and they'd stay max 3 or 4 days, because he is working and Maddox is in school, but never 30 days, never.
Yeah, that is quite.
So, but I'd hear him down from upstairs, him talking to Julian, and sometimes getting after Julian. You need to listen to mommy. And then there's Julian, they'd be goofing off because they'd be on FaceTime every night, right? Every day you guys would be on FaceTime. So I'd hear him playing with Juju or disciplining Juju over FaceTime. Because you could be a pistol sometimes,
Yeah.
Like a typical boy,
So you said he was on furlough. What was his job that he was doing?
He worked at a steel company for he was there for 9 years, and the whole COVID thing.
Yeah, I was going to say, I asked if it was because of COVID. So that's what it was?
It was due to COVID.
Okay.
So he took the time to come, and thank God Andrea didn't mind. So I'm thankful for that. Thank God. Yes.
Yeah. So you just kind of let him take off for a month, huh?
Well, mama's boy. I said, go ahead.
Yeah.
I know he loved his mom dearly. So
yeah.
Well, and I think at the beginning of the pandemic like that, because that's what it was very, very early in, it's just kind of a scary time, right? And you just don't know what's going to happen. And then I think it got everyone thinking a little bit more about your own mortality and the mortality, I think, of your parents and things like that. Like, it would be nice to just have a visit, right? And be able to spend some quality time together.
Yeah. Yeah. She works for the hospital, so she didn't get a furlough. She has to always work. So
yeah, well, that's like me. I mean, there's no furlough.
No,
I just suddenly had to wear a lot more stuff on my body.
Yes.
Yeah.
A lot more masks and shields and gowns and gloves and everything else. But otherwise, it was kind of very much the same as normal. So
he wanted to be back, of course, which he had to go back. But of course, the baby was coming in August, and they had to start preparing for that and getting the room ready. And I think you were still going to have another baby shower or something, right? Or something. And so they were preparing for that, but it went fast. The 10 days, 10 days, and it was gone. They were gone. So,
yeah. So is that a special thing that they would go out for ice cream? Like a special thing that the two of them would do?
Yes, Nick was very spontaneous. I remember, for my pregnancy, I didn't have crazy cravings, but he'd be like, Andrea, do you want ice cream? Do you want a blast, like from Dairy Queen or, and I was just like, no, but he always been like that, just very, very spontaneous.
And Juju loved his sweets.
And Julian he had a sweet tooth. Anything to do with cake, cookies, ice cream, he was there. So, his dad asked me that day too. He said, do you want to come with us? And, that's one of the what ifs that happens with, tragedies. But I said, no, I was tired and I just cleaned the restrooms that day. So I didn't go with them that day.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
There's always
I know,
a lot
you
of
do-
what ifs. The
you
what
do
ifs, and I
think
should have
about
done
that a
this,
lot.
I should have said this, and it's horrible to do that,
Uh-huh.
but we do it.
I think we all do it. I think everybody does it. I'm talk a lot to people whose children die of long, complicating illnesses, and they still do it because they still think, well, what if, he was kind of tired that like a few weeks before. What if I'd have taken him to the doctor then? What if we'd have found something just a little bit sooner? I just think it's such a common thing, no matter what. Because I felt like it would be just more like with something that we went through because of the accident, because it literally was like, I let Andy go upstairs after soccer practice and change. Why did I let him change? Why didn't I say, Bud, we're already going to be late. We're no time to go change. Let's just get in the car. I mean, anything, right? If I would have done one tiny thing a little bit different, we would have had this, potentially totally different outcome. You just
yeah,
end up doing it to yourself again and again and again.
yes,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So I'm sure you did
And I
too.
think you mentioned too on your podcast with Gwen how you don't know if it was a concussion or if you just lost your memory.
Yeah.
And I know I everything is a fog to me. I don't even remember anything for 4 or 5 months. I didn't really feel like I started grieving until like October, because it's weird. I just felt like it was all a blur. And I know Andrea has shared that with me too. She goes, I don't even remember the funeral. We don't know. There was so many people. We know that, and it was the middle of a pandemic. So the fact so many people. We knew it was dangerous. Because there's so many people hugging us and everything, but everything is just a blur. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
It is.
Say, where you're hugging people, and I don't know you. There were a lot of people you don't know that you're hugging, and you're. You don't know a lot of people that are there, and like you said in your podcast, and you're just going in the motions. There's something going on. People are telling you sorry, and it was just an ugly time. It's just a blur to me.
Yeah, I know. For me too, I just feel like there's so much I don't remember. I mean, they call it really kind of grief brain, that your brain just doesn't remember. And I think a lot of it is your body just trying to protect you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. You feel like that, Andrea? You just,
Yes,
it's foggy,
yes.
right?
I felt yes, and it's amazing how your body can get us through as mothers to see our sons in a casket. It's,
oh my word, it's the most horrible thing. It's the most horrible thing.
And the strength, and I believe that's what grief does, the beginning in our body, how it responds to loss, to such a tragic loss. And I remember being at the funeral and just staring at the coffin, at them, and I would just kind of just shake my head, because I was like, no, this is not real.
This is not real. This is not real.
This is not real. And but it's I felt like the crying, the yelling came afterwards, I would say a couple of weeks, but at that moment when everyone was there, it's just kind of like, no, you don't want to accept it,
Right.
So
You almost feel like it's like somehow if you don't accept it, it will really not be real and it won't really be happening. Like,
exactly.
it's obviously I cannot change that reality, but a little bit of you feels like, well, maybe I can, right? Maybe I can change this. Like, there should still be something I can do.
Exactly.
I talked about this rather recently with Gwen, and it really was so striking to me how she said that someone she had talked to said it's easier to accept guilt that you could have done something different than to accept the fact that you were completely powerless in the situation.
Yeah.
And that's the most difficult thing, to know that you had no power at all. And if you had no power in that circumstance, it means you have no power in many circumstances. And that means this horribleness could happen again. And that's terrifying.
Scary. Yeah, that's
so terrifying.
Scary.
Uh-huh.
That's scary.
Yeah. And I'm with you a little bit that you feel like, you know, how you said, Janie, that when after you lost your husband, like, well, God kind of owes me one. So now I'm going to kind of be okay for a while.
Yeah.
And I sort of felt that way too. You know, when I was growing up, my parents both had cancer when I was in high school. My mom eventually died when I was in college. And then things started kind of seeming like they were turning up for me. And like bad things stopped happening. And I was like, you know what? I think maybe enough bad things have happened to me.
Yeah,
I've had a
we've
lot
had
of
our
bad
share.
things happen to me. I'm kind of good now. I can be okay now. And you just get that expectation, because for a long time, I was waiting for the next bad thing to happen. Even when I met my husband and we started dating, he said it actually bothered him about me that I always seemed like I was waiting for something horrible to happen, because that had been my experience growing up, that bad things just happened. And, you know, then a number of years, all these years going by and getting married and having a great career and 3 beautiful children, and then taking my foster son, and like bad things just weren't happening anymore. And I felt like, you know, I just got comfortable.
Right.
And then whammo.
Bam.
Yeah.
A big one.
Yeah.
A big one, like the biggest one, right?
Yes.
The biggest one.
The worst one that can happen, you know, your kid.
Yeah.
You know, the worst thing that can happen.
So funny, because you think the worst thing that could happen was, you know, when I lost my mom, I actually didn't think it could get worse than that, but it really can. And it did.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also too, Marcy, how old was Andy?
Andy was 14.
14. I think when they're children, you know, I think that's the last thing you would ever think of, you know?
Yeah.
You know, just a death of a child, you know, and, you know, them seeing them healthy and playing around, and then, you know, you're
just in a second, just gone.
Yes. Just like that.
Yeah.
Like that.
I mean, Andy was an hour before he died, he was at soccer practice. Like, that's just, it just doesn't seem possible.
right.
So, I really feel for you, Andrea, because, you know, my husband and I turned to each other a lot when we lost Andy. So to have to do that without Nicholas, to mourn Julian like that. Wow.
I don't think Nicholas could have been as strong as her. He would have, if this would have happened just to Julian, I don't see Nicholas. He would have fell apart. I just, you know, Andrea's stronger than Nicholas. I mean, of course she has her moments, but I can't see, he would have fallen apart if it would have, you know, maybe God took them both because of that. I don't know. I really don't know. But now that, you think that, your kids aren't supposed to die, of course. But now that it happened, and I'm involved in other mom groups, and I know Andrea is, but you see so many others now. There's a lot of us. There's a lot of us in this club that we don't want to be in. And there's more than I ever thought. And isn't it weird that a lot of them are boys? To me, I see that they're mostly boys.
Oh, I think they're both, but you probably gravitate more towards the boys.
Maybe that's it, but I see mostly boys.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Marcy, like, well, going back to that, just going through this nightmare without my husband it's undescribable. Because again, he was a very affectionate guy, but at the same time, Marcy, I was so overwhelmed by the community, how they came together to bring me up. You know, they were holding me up and my family. My mom immediately moved in with me. And my dad lives 5 minutes away. Till this day, he comes every other day.
Yeah.
My sister, she's there every weekend. And I feel like Nicholas is there saying, they got you, Andrea. You know, I know one part of him is at peace because he knows that I'm not alone.
Yeah.
And but yes, it's to grieve two people so big, you know.
Yeah.
It's so hard to grieve two people like that. And it was a catastrophic life. You could say half of my family. I had to bury half of my family.
Yeah.
And that I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy.
No.
And I think too about Maddox and him having to, losing his dad and his brother all in one fell swoop like that at his age. Wow.
And to top everything off, to see, as a mother, to see my son grieve,
Mm-hmm.
to lose his father, to lose his son. His baby brother. I felt like when I saw him going through a hard time, I would break down.
Yeah.
I would break down because as a mother, you want to just take that away from him, you know?
Yeah. You want to protect them, right?
Yes.
And you can't take that away. It's one of the worst things, I think, of the whole grief thing is watching your other children grieve.
Yeah.
And watching them have to do this.
Yeah.
It's just so horrible.
Because you feel the pain, but as them as kids, it's not fair. You keep on saying it's not fair. They shouldn't be doing, they shouldn't be going through this.
Right.
And I'm real open with Maddox, and I tell him, Maddox, you can let it all out. You can let me know. You can, if you need to go, you want me to buy you a bat and hit things on the ground just to let that anger out. It's okay, because I feel like children, I don't know if you saw this with your kids, but they tend to hold it in.
Yes. Because they want to protect you.
Yeah. Maddox is he wants to be the protector now. He's the man of the house.
Yep. That's what they do. That all kids do that. They really want to protect their parents. And so, I will never forget being in the hospital that night. And, I had to be the one to tell Peter, Andy's dead. He didn't make it. And his first reaction to me was to rub my arm to comfort me. He didn't cry first for his horrible loss. His first instinct was to touch my arm. And that's when my pastor saw that. And he said, that's when I knew your family was going to be okay. Because we just were hurting for each other from that first moment, just hurting the pain for each other and not just turning into ourselves. You know what I mean? But that was a sign that was going to be his priority, was going to be trying to help his mom and dad, which sometimes I don't like. I'm like you, right? Just let it out. Please just admit to me how, but they don't want to.
Yeah. And I try to make it in my own little way. I try to make it as normal. Like I have a picture of Julian. As soon as you go into my house, and my little way of honoring my boys is I buy them fresh flowers every week.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I'll sit there and I'll talk to the picture, and Maddox comes in, he goes, Mom. And I go, I know, Maddox, I'm just having a conversation with your brother right now. But I still want, because they're so quiet, he's so quiet about it. I want him to talk about it. I want him to be okay to say, hey, Julian. I want him to say Julian without a big old knot in his throat.
Yeah, right.
So
that's a great example, I think, you doing for him and showing him that it's okay. And that is a beautiful thing you're doing. I should take little get a piece from you or a piece of advice from you and do that myself a little bit more, I think.
Yeah. I mean, every day in my little way, to honor them, and to light a candle, I say, here you go, boys, here goes your fresh flowers, and I make it, I change it up, I have fun with it, putting their flowers together. And, but that's what I want. I guess ultimately the end goal is when we leave, we want to be remembered. And Julian's life was so short, incredibly short. It was 4 years. And, but I want him to know that he will always be remembered. He was here for a short time, but he will always be remembered. And that's like, I want just the community to know that it's okay to bring him up. We were talking about that earlier. It just, I might cry. It's okay, but it's okay. It's okay. Yeah. If anything, it's music to my ears.
For sure.
Yes,
I've read that online somewhere. Someone saying, "Don't you know that hearing my son's name is like music?"
Oh yes, and like, the boys were buried. So I told my sister-in-law, like, how I wish I had like a little camera there, or like a I came and visit your boys, because my cousin said, hey, I went to go visit your boys. And that like,
I know,
made my day. You went to go visit my boys, So, and I know it's so hard for people to go to cemeteries or, but just little things like that makes my day, makes a grieving mom. It makes my day.
Yeah. So. If I go there on a couple occasions, there have been things left. So beautiful for me to see. So beautiful.
Yes. So that's just one thing I always try to do, is always remember them. And if no one said his name that day before I go to bed, I say his name several times, and say I'm never forgetting. And Julian did have a blanket that he carried around since he was tiny. And that's my way, My mom told me, she's like, you should have put his blanket in there with him. And I said, no. I said, that's my piece where I feel the closest to him, and and
that's Andy's teddy bear.
Oh, Andy
has a teddy bear, and I still, and I still, when I travel, teddy bear goes, I used to sleep with it every night, but I don't do that anymore. But it sits in my room. I mean, it's there. He's there, and he has to be. And I felt a little bit guilty, like just a little bit, that Herky is the bear's name, that Herky should be with Andy forever, because Herky, Andy never slept without Herky ever. Even at 14, he was still sleeping with his bear. And the last weekend we went up north, he accidentally left the bear. And we're on our way back home, and he said, I forgot Herky. And I said, Bud, we do not have time. We got to get home. You will see Herky next weekend, because we were supposed to go up the next weekend. And then, of course, he died just a few days later. And that's the thing that I said to my in-laws. My in-laws live very close to our place up north. And that day when we had to tell them, I said, you have to bring Herky home to me, because I had to have something to hold. So they did. They got him out of Andy's bed, and he's been with me ever since. So
yep, same thing with Juju's blanket. That's where I feel the closest to him. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I have Nicholas's
thank you.
Andrea was kind enough to let me use for a while. I wanted a part of Nicholas too, because he loved his jewelry. He had this one and another one. And while he was here, he had them made shorter. But she was kind enough to let me wear it for a while. So I'm gonna wear it until I can give it to Maddox.
Oh, it's yours.
I feel so close to him, with this. So I know exactly how that feels. I know exactly.
Well, thank you so much, both of you ladies, for being on the podcast today and sharing your sweet boys with me. I just loved it.
Well, thank you, Marcy.
Thank you for
Had a
having
great
us both. And thank you. We wanted to do it to keep them alive too. So.
Thanks for listening to Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. Please subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast player. We are always looking for new show ideas. If you'd like to be a guest, know someone who'd be a great guest, or have a show idea, please email us at marcy@andysmom.com. Be sure to visit the webpage, andysmom.com, for more content, including Marcy's blog. There you can also sign up to receive updates via email. Together, let's work to inspire hope, one day at a time.